Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about elevations. What are elevations? Let's find out. An elevation is a scaled drawing that shows a vertical surface or plane, and it's shown from a point of view perpendicular to the viewer. Okay, so this is all some very fancy words to say that you're now drawing the side of a building in a vertical view. All right. Elevations are specifically drawn as straight on views. There's no distortion of view, just as in a perspective or an isometric. And the reason, why should we draw such a thing? The reason for drawing elevations is to show any heights, to show any materials, and just any other information that can't be seen in other drawings in your construction set, such as floor plans and sections. So let's take a look at this illustration here. Here's a three-dimensional house. The house is a three-dimensional object. And we've talked several times in this course about how you would draw a floor plan. Remember that a floor plan is like a horizontal section through the walls and windows of a house, and then you kind of lift that roof off and you take a look down and see what you see. Well, the elevation is a little bit different. In the elevation, you step back from the house. Okay, look at it a side view. So perhaps you've got a little viewer, a person standing right here looking directly at the side of this house. And so we're looking directly horizontally at the three-dimensional object. And so we will see the face of the building or the vertical view. So elevations are going to look something like this. This is a side elevation, and here's a front elevation. So the point of an elevation is to illustrate the finished appearance of an exterior or an interior wall of a building. Now you're in an interior design program, so you are most interested in and focused on the interior of a room. And so today we're going to talk about specifically interior elevations. An interior elevation is a vertical projection of a wall or other surface, if you happen to have something else, inside of a building. It's going to show the finished appearance of that wall or surface. So here's an example. This is kind of a three-dimensional view of an interior room. So we're in the room. And if someone is standing, for example, right on this arrow and looking at this particular wall right here that has some, looks like kitchen cabinets on it, they would see this elevation right here. So it is the view directly at that wall. It's not at an angle of any kind. You can't see any of the three-dimensional objects that are around it. You can't see the ceiling. You can't see the side walls. You are looking directly at that wall, this piece right here. And that's an interior elevation. So what kind of information do we include in interior elevations? They generally show object profiles, so the edges of objects. They show finish materials. This is something that's fairly hard to show on floor plans. It's the finish materials of vertical surfaces, and therefore we need to include that information in elevations. They also show relationships between different objects. Okay, and again, these are on a vertical plane, so those relationships and dimensions, etc., are hard to show on a floor plan view. And any other vertical dimensions that you can't put on a floor plan view. Do you show horizontal dimensions in an elevation? The answer is yes. Any object that you see more detail in the elevation, you've got some vertical demarcations, then you're going to add those horizontal dimensions to your elevation. Let's take a look at a couple of examples to kind of clarify this here. So here's an example of a interior elevation of a kitchen area. Excuse me. And we can see that in this way we can show the finished materials. And here's an example, some ceramic tile. And not only do we show what material it is, we show exactly where it goes. And that information could not be provided on just a floor plan. It would be very hard in the floor plan to give this little detail of how the tile is coming up around this little window here. Okay, so that's very important level of detail, and that's why we use interior elevations. So we're also showing, let's see, some other finishes. Here's a rubber base, bullnose at backsplash, okay, painted frame of this door, the glass in that door. All of these details really only exist in the vertical plane, and so you can't effectively convey that information with a floor plan. This illustration is also a good example of line weights in this drawing. You'll see that there is a very heavy profile type line weight that goes around the exterior of the drawing, and this is typical for interior elevations. Anything that you cut through, which will be the profile of your ceiling, your walls, and your floor, all right, is going to be a very heavy line weight. And then the next heaviest is major lines in your drawing. And in this case, they've chosen to outline the windows here. And looks like the top of the countertop, and maybe the outline of the cabinets, and they've outlined their door with the next level of line weight. And then you have the lightest line weight, and that's going to be any details such as the tile and any hatch and other details such as these drawers and hardware on these cabinets. So I want you to remember, for interior elevations specifically, because you are cutting through, conceptually you're cutting through the ceiling, floor, and the walls, you want to make those a very heavy line weight. One way some of these materials are shown is using a texture, or in AutoCAD that's called a hatch pattern. And so here are a couple of examples of materials being called out or delineated with a texture. And up here we have a sand finished plaster, and that's being shown with kind of a dot pattern. Here we've got tile being shown by a grid pattern that is specific to that particular size and spacing of tile. And in these bookshelves and this end panel here of bleached and sealed wood, we're seeing kind of a wood grain pattern being shown. Right? In all of these cases, the pattern or the texture really helps show where those materials are and the extent of them. They go all the way to this particular line. They go to this line. And so it's an easy way to show those particular materials. So let's talk about some dimensions on elevations. The dimensions, elevations are used to convey vertical dimensions. So we see that right here. This door is 7 foot 4 inches tall. And also we've got some smaller dimensions calling out the individual panes of glass. Now some detailed horizontal dimensions are also shown for things that we can't show in the floor plan. For example, in the floor plan for this door, you wouldn't show the individual panes of glass. And therefore, there's no way to call out those panes dimensions. And therefore, we do that right here on the elevation, 1 foot 3 inches centered in that door. Here's another example of an interior elevation with dimensions. So we can see here that we've got some overall dimensions. They don't give a full height overall dimension in this example, but here are some overall dimensions of, looks like step 1, 2, and 3 of this entry foyer. Okay. And then in this string, we've got a little bit more detailed dimensions for those vertical heights. Okay. Notice that in this case, the horizontal dimensions are not called out. That's probably because all of those horizontal dimensions are called out in a floor plan or a reflected ceiling plan of this area. And there's no need, and in fact, it's bad practice to duplicate the dimensions. Why is it bad practice? Well, remember that if you've got a dimension showing the exact same um, dimension in two different locations in your set and you change something and you only catch it, you only change it in one place but not another, suddenly you've got a conflict within your set. And so therefore it's best practice to only call out dimensions in one location on your set. Now, your elevations are going to be tagged onto your floor plan. And there's a number of different ways to do this, many different symbols that kind of mean the same thing. And here's one example only. All right. This one right here is going to be an interior elevation of 4 different views of this, whatever this is, looks like part of a bathroom. All right, and so then if we went to sheet 4 of that set, we would see drawing 1, 2, 3, 4 be 4 different interior elevations of that particular room. So that's one way. It combines 4 symbols into one, basically. Here is another way if you want to do some single views, if you just have one view. And for this kind of tag, you're going to have your elevation number or your drawing number. You're going to have your drawing sheet down here. And then you'll have an arrow pointing in the direction of view for that particular elevation. So why are we talking about elevations today? It's because you are required to draw an interior elevation for your final project. So for that project, I'd like you to select one room in your house to document with an interior elevation. Please pick an interesting wall, all right? Don't pick a blank wall. Pick a wall that's got at least 4 or 5 things on it that we could show, whether there be doors, furniture, windows, fireplace, whatever it is. One of the more tricky elevations, but interesting, is kitchen cabinets. Bathrooms are also fairly tricky, but interesting. So pick some room of your house, pick one wall, and draw an interior elevation of it. You're going to use the same drawing scale that you use for your floor plan. Once you've drawn your interior elevation, I want you to label items using multi-letters. And here's an example of that from your textbook. This one is called a dresser. And here's a flat screen TV, desk, and chair. I don't know why they didn't label this item here, but it needs to be labeled. Might be a wall heater or something. Anyway, so label the items in your drawings. And then this is extra. They didn't do this in your example in the textbook, but I would like you to include at least 2 vertical dimensions. And one will be your overall ceiling height. That's it, this one right here. And one will be a height of some other important item in your drawing. Okay. Typically, we would only dimension heights of fixed or built-in items, not necessarily furniture. So a height of a window, a height of a door, a height of a cabinet, something that's fixed or built in your drawing. If you don't have that, if your interior elevation only includes furniture, then pick us a furniture or two to show us some vertical heights. Finally, don't forget to title your elevation right here. And last but not least, don't forget to go back to your plan view and tag the interior elevation. So please use the symbol given in your textbook. It looks like a circle with a letter in it, and it's got this triangle looking pointer that will point in the direction of your view. So here's the example in your textbook right here, this piece here. It's pointing at the wall that you're looking at. Now, if you happen to be looking at, for example, the left-hand wall in your drawing, you're going to rotate the pointer part, okay, the arrow part, towards the wall that it's looking at. Don't rotate the text. That the letter A stays vertical. Thanks, everyone. This was a continuation of our series on technical drawing, and now you have a little bit of expertise in how to draw things in the vertical dimension.